Hello, everyone. I wanted to make a video talking about the first essay, which is due, I believe, September 13th. So this week, as we begin one new section of the course, you are also going to be thinking pretty heavily about the first section of the course, Epicureanism and its puzzles. So it's going to be a full week. But I thought I'd just, talk informally about the first essay assignment, about how I imagine the essays to go in this class, and also the particulars about the questions that I asked for this assignment. Okay, so the first thing to say is that you have a choice. Please don't respond to both of these questions. Choose one or the other. One is really about the dispute between Nagel and Epicurus, and the other has to do with Bruckner and Fischer's attempt to solve the asymmetry problem. I don't know what advice to give you, except that obviously you want to write about what you find more interesting or what you understand most, or it really is completely up to you. But don't write about both, please, because that wouldn't work out at all. I would have to just ask you to rewrite it. So 750 words is about 3 printed pages in the old typewriter days, 1-inch margins, usual font. So about 750 words, which is about 3 pages, which is about right, I think, for this. The page number thing or the word count is fairly loose, right? You can go under, but you won't have that much space to go under, and you can certainly go over if you wish. But 3 pages should be enough space in which to adequately respond to these questions. But I don't count words. It's in the ballpark. It's fine. First question, or the first possibility, the first option here about Nagel. Did Nagel refute Epicurus's claim that death cannot ever be considered bad for the one who dies? Why or why not? Okay, so let's make sure that we're on the same page about some of the terminology there, like the word refute. When I use a word like refute, or when I use the word refute, when I ask whether Nagel refuted Epicurus, what I really mean, did he successfully prove Epicurus wrong on this particular point? Well, we all know by now that Nagel doesn't disagree with everything in Epicurus' theory of death, but he definitely disagrees with the Epicurean claim that death cannot ever be considered a bad thing for the one who dies. So when I ask you, basically I'm asking you in this essay, in his work Death, did Nagel actually successfully prove Epicurus wrong on that particular point? It's a pretty straightforward thing. The advice I can give you in general with these essay assignments is address the question asked. That is, it's not an open assignment where you just sort of tell what you know about Epicurus or Nagel. You have to answer that particular question to do well, to really fulfill the assignment. So make sure that you understand the question that's asked. And you're a student. There is no shame at all in saying, I don't understand the question. You're learning. So I'm the teacher. So if you don't really grasp what I'm getting at, or you're not sure you grasp what I'm getting at, contact me, please. We'll talk it over. We'll clarify things. So that is an open invitation. So to address the question asked, you must be sure that you understand the question asked. And if you're not sure, please feel free to contact me. But in particular, what would you sort of have to feel confident on? Well, pretty obviously, Pause it just for a second here, if you'll excuse me. Sorry, I had to pause. So and eat dinner. So this might be a little disjointed from the last thing I said because I'm not quite sure where we were, but I think it was here. Um, that is, what I'm trying to sort of outline is that if you're going to respond to question one, you really have to give an account of why Epicurus thought it wasn't a bad for the one who died to die. You have to be able to present that in a clear and reasoned way, what his position is and why he holds it. That is, what his supporting reasoning is. And the second thing you need to do is to give a clear and reasoned account. And it's not an easy task because Nagel, a difficult essay, but why Nagel thought it was at least sometimes a bad for the one who dies. And remember, you have to keep in mind what Nagel's problems are. It has much to do with the kind of bad that death is for the one who dies, which is not so clear because it can't be bad like getting punched in the face or stubbing your toe or having a stomach ache or a toothache, because death doesn't feel bad. So we've been through this in the essays and in the live sessions. I don't need to go through it, but you do need to give an account of that. And then it has to have your own assessment. Your own assessment, which is basically your own assessment of Nagel's argument, which basically is did Nagel prove Epicurus is wrong about this, about death not being bad for the one who dies? So that's really how you have to go about that. I would say, probably most of the essay questions or essay assignments really ask you to do something similar, to give an account of a philosopher's reasoning, to give an account perhaps of another philosopher's reasoning, and then to give your own account, your own critical assessment of their arguments, whether you think their arguments are good arguments or not. Simple procedure, hard to do, right? I understand it. But the second question would be about Bruckner and Fisher's death. And the question is, did they actually solve the asymmetry problem? Why or why not? Well, okay. What would the procedure be here? Again, this may seem rather obvious, but I don't know if it's obvious or not. I think that the first thing you have to feel good on, you grasp well, and to be able to give an account of is what the asymmetry problem actually is, which is hard enough. But then the second question you'd have to really be able to get across is, sorry, is this too small? I'm sorry, it should be bigger. What is the asymmetry problem? But what it means to solve the asymmetry problem, right? Can't seem to get things straight here. That is, it's a certain problem. Why is it a problem? But what would it mean to solve it? I think one of the things I've really emphasized, I hope, in the videos is that solving the asymmetry problem really means course, you got to be familiar with terminology here. It's another part of mastering this material, another part of putting yourself in a position to write a good essay. I shouldn't, I mean, I shouldn't need to tell you at all what posthumous non-existence and prenatal non-existence actually mean. But to solve the asymmetry problem basically means to prove, to establish that it is indeed rational, reasonable, to regard posthumous non-existence as worse than prenatal non-existence, because the accusation from Lucretius or from the Epicurean generally is that to regard them differently is irrational. So they're both just periods of non-existence. So to do it, you really have to prove that there's something significantly different about posthumous and prenatal non-existence that would actually support and justify and warrant us treating them differently. So I would say that, yeah, the very doable. I've read some great essays in the past, students responding to this particular question. But you have to feel comfortable discussing the asymmetry problem, explaining it, describing it. You'd have to be able to, show that you understood what it would mean in general to solve it, as I've just sort of gone over. And finally, you would really need to be able to describe what is the particular solution that Bruckner and Fisher offer in this article. And that is, to solve the problem in general would be to establish that it's rational to regard posthumous non-existence as worse than prenatal non-existence. But there's not just one way of doing that. What is their particular way in this essay that they do it? And they do it in the last section, right? The second section, why death is bad. They do that. And then, of course, finally, your own assessment, right? Just as with the other topic, you really have to. Your own assessment is your own assessment. Your own assessment of whether they successfully solve the problem. And let me tell you, it's not easy. But one of the problems that I remember students having in the past is that their assessment didn't actually focus on the particular argument that Bruckner and Fisher offer at the end. You can't really be vague about it. There's an argument at the end in which they try to prove that the asymmetry problem is not real. That is, to just dismiss it, to solve it, in which they try to prove that it indeed is fully rational to regard posthumous non-existence as worse than prenatal non-existence. Your assessment needs to be an assessment of that argument, not a general, did you find it convincing? No, it's got to focus on that. So, maybe I've made it sound harder than it is. Really just do your best and keep that in mind. I would say, especially this, right? Which is always something to keep in mind, to address the question asked. If you have any questions about the assignment, about the first essay, any anxieties, any particular questions, feel free to ask me.